Hello, everyone, and many thanks for joining this stream. And of course, many thanks to all the members of our community that will either join later on or will watch this video after the stream. Today is 3rd of June, now it's 11 o'clock, and I have prepared quite a number of news on some major developments, and hopefully you will find this episode informative and useful. Before I start, let me just remind you, dear friends, that if you want to highlight any topic, you might send your question or the commentary, and I will talk about it during the stream. You can send your question or the comment through support platforms for this project, which is PayPal, Boosty, Patreon, and during the live stream, you can send your question or the commenter through super chat on Rumble. Unfortunately, my channel on YouTube is not monetized and never gonna be monetized, so there is no super chat feature on YouTube, but it is on Rumble, so you can use that if you want to. That's being said, dear friends, let's start today's news update. And well, first of all, of course, I'm gonna start with the whatever results are known on terms of on topic of Istanbul summit that took place yesterday. Direct talks between Russian and Ukrainian delegations. Unfortunately, I was unable to make live stream yesterday, as I did promise during yesterday's first live stream. But I was dealing with high blood pressure, by the way. One of the members of our community joked about it in the comment section. I noticed it, that Levan might have a high blood pressure, and I mean, that was the case, and I am still dealing with it, by the way, now, but work needs to be done, so I'm online. Anyways, let's go through some key points from yesterday's meeting that took place in Istanbul. So key statements by the head of the Russian delegation at the Istanbul talks, Vladimir Medinsky, after the meeting of negotiating teams of Russia and Ukraine. I share this information, of course, on my Telegram and Twitter X page. And dear friends, if you are not subscribed, please consider to do so, because quite often I do share information, relative information on these channels before live stream, before news or video news update. So these key points are: Russia handed over a memorandum to Ukrainian side, which consists of two parts on how to achieve a long-term peace between the conflicting parties and what steps are needed to full ceasefire. Next week, Russia will unilaterally transfer 6,000 bodies of dead Ukrainian soldiers and officers to the Ukrainian side. Russia will accept the bodies of dead Russian soldiers if Ukraine has them to transfer to Russian side. Russia and Ukraine will exchange all seriously wounded and seriously ill prisoners according to the formula all for all, which is definitely a step forward in terms of humanitarian side. According to the same formula, young soldiers under the age of 25 will be also exchanged. Young POWs under the age of 25 also will be exchanged. The total exchange ceiling is at least 1,000 people from each side. So significant, definitely significant progress in terms of this humanitarian development. At least another 1,000 POWs from each side. Younger people and also people that are in difficult medical conditions will be exchanged. The Russian Federation and Ukraine will create a permanent medical commissions to form a list of their exchange of the seriously wounded. Such exchanges will take place regularly. So from now on, both sides will be in contact to basically exchange heavily wounded POWs. Russia has offered Ukraine a specific ceasefire for 2-3 days on certain sectors of the front the ceasefire should allow their bodies of the dead soldiers to be evacuated by sites. Ukrainian military promised to work out the ceasefire proposed by the Russian as soon as possible. And yesterday, by the way, during these direct talks between Russian and Ukrainian delegations, Ukrainian side handed over to Russia a list of children it demands to be returned with 339 names. In it, Russia has already returned to Ukraine 101 children, and Kiev has returned to Russia 22 children. If you remember, dear friends, I will focus a little bit on this topic. If you remember, one of the reasons why this International Criminal Court, so-called court, by the way, issued an arrest warrant on Russian President Vladimir Putin and their children's ombudsman was topic of evacuated children from conflict zone, mainly from orphanages. And of course, Russian troops had to evacuate these children, isn't it? That were left by their parents and the relatives in these orphanages, right? And initially, you know, Kiev regime and its Western backers went in a massive propaganda to claim that Russia kidnapped some literally million or 1.5 million children from Ukraine. Then they downgrade this number to 200,000, then to 20,000, then to 10,000. And yesterday, Kiev regime handed over to Russian side list of 339 names that are allegedly supposed to be on Russian territory, children. And Medinsky, head of Russian delegation, stated that Russian side will look at this, and if relatives of the children that been evacuated will are ready to basically take care of these kids, then there will be no issues with returning these kids. But once again, one should keep in mind that these children were evacuated from left orphanages. Right, and also let me remind you, dear friends, that some time ago, Kiev regime was also claiming that some hundreds of kids were kidnapped by Russian side, and you know what happened? 150 children were found in Germany. So Kiev regime is speculating with numbers, with names, and 150 children was found in Germany, by the way. You know. And therefore, it is a possibility that from these 339 names, significant part of these children are either on Ukraine somewhere, on Kiev-controlled territory, or maybe they've been evacuated in the West. But Russian side is definitely open to communicate with the relatives, maybe parents, maybe relatives, whomever, grandfathers, grandmothers, if they want to take these children that being evacuated by Russian forces. Well, Russia is very, very much open for that, and in support of reconciliation of their families. So this is key points from statements of Russia's head of Russian delegation, Medinsky, and Zelensky, by the way, almost a couple of minutes after these negotiations between Russian and Ukrainian sides had ended, that last about hour, little more than an hour, by the way. After that, Zelensky almost straight away went to talk to so-called journalists on Kiev-controlled territory, and he basically rejected Russia's initiative about temporary ceasefire, 2-3-day ceasefire on certain sectors, so that sides will be able to evacuate killed military personnel. And why Zelensky did this? Because, as you all know, dear friends, Kiev regime and its Western backers are pushing this false narrative that since the beginning of special military operation, Kiev regime only lost about some 50,000 troops, something like that, isn't it? And they don't want any real numbers to be disclosed, right? They are not evacuating their killed military personnel for a number of reasons. And one of the reasons is that they are hiding true losses. And another reason is that they are not paying relatives of these killed personnel, military personnel, compensations, as they should. Right? That's the reason why Zelensky straight away rejected this initiative of the Russian side about this temporary 2-3 day ceasefire on certain lines of contact after heavy battles, one may assume, right? So that killed military personnel can be evacuated by sites. And no one should be surprised if Kyiv regime will even try to derail this Russian initiative to transfer to Kyiv regime bodies of 6,000 killed Ukrainian military personnel, soldiers and their officers, because, well, yet again, transfer of this killed personnel to Kyiv regime will jeopardize this false narrative about casualty numbers that Zelensky himself is talking about quite often. And secondly, well, these names of this killed personnel will be released, and their relatives will most likely demand their compensations from the states. And I saw some calculations on internet, and Kyiv regime would have to pay. And yet again, your friends, it's not my calculations. I don't know what is their compensation that is given to families in Kyiv-controlled territory when their member is dying in this conflict. But according to some calculations that was done by other people, Kyiv regime will have to pay $2.5 billion to families of this killed military personnel, 6,000 military personnel. So that could be another reason, additional reason, why Kyiv regime may try to derail this process of transferring from Russian to Ukrainian side bodies of these killed 6,000 military personnel, and actual number of killed personnel could be like 10 times higher. But I listened to Medinsky's statement when he was talking about this topic, and he said that in case of these 6,000 killed military personnel, DNA tests were conducted and information was basically collected about their identity. And that's why this number is 6,000. But real number, actual number could be much higher, but work is still on the way to identify this personnel, right? Meanwhile, we have this report from TASS news agency about losses of Kyiv regime during the previous 24 hours, and take a look at the numbers, by the way. Just in 24 hours, according to Russian Defense Ministry, Kyiv regime lost more than 1,400 military personnel killed and wounded. And this is happening literally on a daily basis. And therefore, obviously, no one should be surprised when some unimaginable numbers being spoken by Western military experts when it comes to casualties on side of Kyiv regime. I remind you, dear friends, that Colonel McGregor, Douglas McGregor, U.S. military expert, decorated colonel, quite a few times stated that according to his information, Kyiv regime already lost, as a killed in action, more than 1 million military personnel, about 1.2 million military personnel, which is horrific, isn't it? That's the level of sacrifice of this former republic that Western ruling class globalists have undertaken, and they will sacrifice all of them, literally everyone on Kyiv-controlled territory, because they simply don't care. Later on yesterday, to continue, dear friends, yesterday, little later, full text of Russian memorandum was published. I think community is interested. What is the Russian proposals in regards to achieving long-lasting peace? And let's go through some key points of this memorandum. I published memorandum on my Telegram and Twitter X page. Some members of our community probably see it, but I guess not majority. So let's go through some key points in this memorandum. So international legal recognition of their entry of Crimea the LPR, DPR, the Zaporozhye and Kherson region into Russia. That is a Russian demand in this memorandum. Also, proclamation of Ukraine's neutrality and its refusal to join military alliances. A ban on military activities of the other states in Ukraine. Non-nuclear status of Ukraine. Establishing the maximum number of the armed forces of Ukraine. Lifting of economical sanctions imposed against Russia. Ensuring the rights and the freedoms of the Russian-speaking population, lifting restrictions on the activities of Ukrainian Orthodox Church, banning their glorification of Nazism. Russian side in this memorandum also highlights gradual restoration of diplomatic and economic relations with Ukraine, mutual waiver of claims for damage caused by military operations. So no one side should claim compensations. Resolving issues related to reunification of families and displaced persons. There is, as I already mentioned earlier, there is two options for a ceasefire. One option, withdrawal of Ukrainian armed forces from the Russian territories occupied by Ukraine in the DPR, LPR, Zaporozhye and Kherson regions. Option two, prohibition of the redeployment of armed forces of Ukraine, termination of mobilization and the beginning of demilitarization. And demobilization, by the way. Exclusion of military presence of third countries, stopping foreign military aid to Kiev, Kiev's refusal to carry out sabotage activity against Russia, mutual amnesty of political prisoners and release of detained civilians. And there are tens of thousands of people, by the way, have disappeared on Kiev-controlled territory since 2014 after US orchestrated bloody coup d'etat in Kiev. And this point here, this key point, is about civilians that are still imprisoned by Kiev regime's forces. Some of them that are still alive, because majority probably have been killed by Ukrainian Nazis, and someday probably we will learn how many civilians Kiev regime actually executed for having their opinion. Also, key point from Russian memorandum, a lifting of martial law in Ukraine, elections in Ukraine no later than 100 days after the lifting of martial law. And yes, that's it. That's the key points, by the way. So martial law should be lifted, and after 100 days, no more than 100 days since martial law is lifted, elections should take place, so that the topic of legitimacy of the representatives of Kiev regime would not be questioned, right? So this is some of the key points from Russian memorandum. Share your opinion, dear friends, what you think about it. I was not surprised at all to see these key points. Russian side was very clear, always basically, how it sees a roadmap towards sustainable peace, and this memorandum is basically based on all their statements that Russian high-ranking officials, including Russian president, have made on this matter in previous 2-3 years. Hello everyone, I hope you find informative and useful this short clip from main news update, and if so, please click that like button and leave some commentary just about anything. It might help to deal with the algorithm and reach wider audience. And if you like my work in general and want to support to save this media project, you can assist through several ways. You can donate to this project through PayPal platform or Boosty, also with the crypto currencies, or you can subscribe to my Patreon page and page on Boosty, where I have quite a lot of extra content on regular basis. All the links are on this video in description box and in the pinned comment. And of course, many thanks to everyone who already helped and continues to support. Thank you.